I am the only one in my family who inherited the ability of rebirth. When I was still babbling as a toddler, my mother would write lottery numbers all over the walls with charcoal and teach me to memorize them. If I misread or recited them wrong, she would embroider the incorrect numbers on my arm with an embroidery needle to help me remember. By the time I was 6 years old, I had memorized every lottery number from my childhood. My father unexpectedly took me to the county town, fulfilling my wish to eat ice cream, and it was on that very day that my father excitedly led me to a desolate cliff edge. "Vivian, you've lived a good life for so long, it's time for you to repay the family." The next second, my father pushed me off the steep cliff, opening my eyes again. I was reborn at the age of 3. Mom and Dad looked at me with eager anticipation. "Vivian, what are today's lottery numbers?" In our family, a reincarnated individual appears every 10 generations. I happen to be the 10th generation in my family, so my parents neither farmed nor worked, focusing solely on having children. They had 7 in total, and it wasn't until I was born that our family's century-old genealogy book changed color. Thus, when I was still babbling as a toddler, my mother would write lottery numbers all over the mud walls with charred black charcoal, teaching me to read and memorize them. But young as I was, I could never remember them correctly, either mixing up the numbers or the dates. At first, Mother didn't hit me, but when I turned 2, Mother, who was desperate for a better life, finally lost her patience and decided to punish me. At first, she only used willow twigs to whip my calves. The twigs were thin and soft, but they stung terribly when they struck my legs. As the number of lottery tickets I needed to memorize grew, so did the frequency of my mistakes. Mom thought I wasn't taking it seriously, so she started hitting me with a stick as thick as a thumb and burning me with red-hot iron tongs. Back then, I didn't understand. I only knew to beg for mercy in a childish voice. "Mom, I was wrong, please, don't hit me anymore." And this would often make my mother even angrier. She glared at me with a furious and ferocious expression. "I told you to memorize the lottery numbers. Why are you spouting nonsense? Don't you know talking affects concentration? You're so stupid. When will I ever get to live a good life?" At this point, my mother would take out an embroidery needle and, like sewing clothes, stitch the numbers I misread onto my arm. I'm in so much pain, but I don't dare cry or make a fuss. It's not until evening when Dad comes home that I finally burst into loud sobs. Then Dad would lift me onto his lap to sit. "Vivian, don't blame your mother, you were just too disobedient. If you'd listened to her and obediently memorized the lottery numbers, why would she have sewn the numbers into your arm with an embroidery needle? She only did it for your own good, to help you remember better. You can see for yourself how poor our family is. The sooner you memorize all the lottery numbers, the sooner we can live a better life." Listening to my father's excited heartbeat, as a child, I couldn't understand why memorizing lottery numbers would bring my family a better life. Apart from hitting me and forcing me to memorize lottery numbers, my mother was actually quite good to me. My parents didn't work in the fields, so our family could only rely on potatoes to fill our stomachs year-round. Yet, I was the only one in our family who could eat an egg every day, because my mother said, only if I ate well would my memory improve, and the time and speed at which I memorized lottery numbers would increase. Apart from that, even my 3 older brothers had to work, while I alone didn't have to do anything. So even though Mom might hit me, I still think she's the best mom in the world. Until one day, Grandma came to our house. After Grandma left, Mom pulled Dad into the bedroom. She said Grandma told her I needed a brain replacement, that only by changing my brain could I become smart. At that time, I had just had numbers tattooed on my arm by my mother, and it was both painful and itchy. I didn't quite hear clearly how exactly the brain transplant would work, but I was willing to do it. Not being able to memorize the lottery numbers and failing to give my parents a better life filled me with guilt. So when evening came, Dad said he was taking me to a special place, and I eagerly followed along. Even on the way there, to keep Dad happy, I excitedly recited lottery numbers, but I never expected Dad would take me to a graveyard. Before I could even figure out what was happening, Dad led me to a coffin. A grimy old man stood beside the coffin. My father pulled $500 from his pocket and handed it over. "Your brain-swapping trick really works." The old man swayed his head and chuckled. Of course, the person in that coffin was the top scorer in the National College entrance exam back then. If his family hadn't been in the county town, who would dare to dig up a grave in the middle of the night? "All right, have your daughter lie down inside, as long as she stays with this top scorer for 3 days. I guarantee she'll come back with a smarter brain. Though I was young at the time, I still understood the old man's words. I turned around to run, but my father grabbed the back of my neck tightly from behind. "Vivian, what are you running for?" I watched in horror as my favorite dad. After a dazed pause of 2 seconds, I began struggling violently, because I had clearly seen the appearance of the person lying in the coffin, rather than calling him a person. It would be more accurate to say he was several pieces of stinking human bones, but father paid no heed to my tearful pleas. He grabbed me and ruthlessly threw me into the coffin. I screamed and tried to climb out. Father gripped my head and shoved hard, sending my body crashing back into the coffin. Finally, with indifference, the coffin lid blocked the last sliver of moonlight on the horizon. I stayed in the coffin for 3 days. For those 3 days, I smelled the stench of decay. Crying one moment and raging the next, but after each bout of tears and fury, a bitter ache would rise again in my chest, because I realized that my parents don't seem to love me that much after all. This suddenly reminded me of the rumors in the village. People in the village say our family has 7 children, but I only have 3 older brothers. I have never seen my 3 elder sisters. People in the village say that my 3 sisters were turned into flowerpot girls by my father and sold. I don't understand what flowerpot girls are. How can a person become a flower? But I knew it couldn't be anything good, and I was horrified to realize that if I hadn't inherited the family's rebirth ability, I might have been turned into a flower girl by my father and sold off too, though I still don't know what this rebirth ability actually is. But thankfully, my father finally let me out. The moment I saw the moonlight again, my entire body trembled. The old man fixed me with a lecherous gaze. "Vivian, can you remember the numbers properly from now on?" I looked at the old man's terrifying, grotesque smile and nodded hurriedly. I can." Satisfied, the old man walked over toward Dad. "This girl's fate is too strong. We might need to perform another ritual. Take her back first and observe. If it doesn't work, come find me again." I trembled violently in fear once more. I glanced in terror at the human bones lying in the coffin. I swore to myself I would never come back here again. When I got home, I developed a high fever. In my feverish sleep, I had many dreams. I dreamed of my 3 sisters whom I had never met. They smiled and invited me to play with them. I hesitated for a moment, then refused. Even though Mom and Dad were very harsh with me, I still didn't want to leave them. I lay at home for 3 days. And when I opened my eyes again, Mom was lying beside me, her face full of exhaustion. Seeing me awake, she reached out and touched my forehead. The warmth from the palm of my hand seeped through my skin, reaching deep into my core. Back then, I thought my mother must still love me. She only hit me because she wanted a better life too badly. Dad returned to his old self too, buying me chocolates that only city kids could afford. Though I didn't like them, they were too bitter. But I still threw myself into my father's arms with overwhelming joy. It was also from that moment on that I made up my mind to memorize lottery numbers diligently, not wanting to see my father and mother transform into different forms again. Of course, I also didn't want to be sent to that old man for his rituals anymore. Strangely enough, ever since I resolved to memorize lottery numbers seriously, my mind seems to have improved. From not being able to remember even 1 lottery number set a day before, now I can memorize 3 sets daily. Every time I exceed my tasks, Dad gently pats my head and praises me for doing great. Mom hasn't hit me anymore either. Items like fire tongs and embroidery needles have all been put away. How happy I was back then. Time flew by, and I gradually grew up, memorizing all the lottery numbers before the age of 6 in my mind, until the day before my 6th birthday. My father gently ruffled my hair. "Vivian, tomorrow is your birthday. What gift would you like?" I looked at him with sparkling eyes. "Ice cream, Dad. I want ice cream." Dad nodded with a simple, honest smile. "Okay." Early the next morning, Dad took me to the county town. There was not only an amusement park but also various snack shops here. This brand new world amazed me beyond words. Dad also took me to a breakfast shop and ordered sweet soy milk and delicious meat buns for me. I ate until my mouth was shiny with oil. Just as we finished breakfast, Dad was about to take me away. A man walked into the small diner. He wore a brown jacket with a stern expression, and the long, slightly upturned scar on his face made him look particularly terrifying and fierce. I was so frightened that I quickly hid behind my dad. After leaving the diner, I nervously asked my dad, "Daddy, that man who just came in is so scary." Father replied impatiently, "He's a murderer." If you keep making a fuss, I'll have him kill you, chop you into mince, and make dumplings out of you." Terrified, my body trembled violently again, and I didn't dare say another word. But in a child's world, no matter how frightening the emotions, they can all vanish completely when faced with something delicious. I am no exception. When Dad shoved the cheapest ice cream from the shop into my hand, I instantly forgot all about the murderer. I never imagined that the ice cream of my dreams could taste so delicious, but what I didn't know was that the ice cream in my hand would be the last flavor I'd ever taste in this lifetime. After finishing the ice cream, Dad was about to take me home, but then I saw the murderer I had encountered that morning. He was sitting by the door next to the ice cream shop, feeding stray cats with steamed buns, a faint smile on his lips. Watching the man's smiling lips, I frowned in confusion. Didn't Dad say that man was a murderer? Then why was the murderer so gentle when feeding the cat? My dad would always kick stray cats on the street if he came across them. Before I could figure it out, Dad's impatient voice came from not far away. "Vivian, what are you standing there dumbfounded for? Come here now." I was so frightened that my body jerked violently, and I quickly ran after my father. On the way home, I kept wanting to ask about that murderer, but my father completely ignored me, only hurrying along the path, until he led me to the edge of a steep cliff. I looked at the seemingly endless cliff bottom, and my body instinctively tugged at the hem of my father's clothes. "Daddy, why aren't we moving forward?" Dad crouched down in front of me. "Vivian, has Daddy been good to you?" I don't know why Dad would ask that, but I still nodded solemnly. "Dad is very good to me." A big smile appeared at the corner of Dad's mouth. "Then would Vivian be willing to repay Dad?" "I do, Daddy." The moment I spoke, my body was suddenly lifted into the air. Dad had picked me up, but before I could even scream, I was thrown off the cliff by my father. As my body fell, so did my uncontrollable tears. I never imagined that my own father would kill me, until my back slammed heavily onto the rocks. I groaned and cried out in pain. The excruciating pain surging through my body made me instinctively clutch at the wild grass by the roadside with a death grip. I don't know where I found such strength, but I knew one thing. I didn't want to die. I want to live. I want to ask my dad, why did he do this to me? Until I'm about to climb back to the edge of the cliff, the father who had left suddenly reappeared. He smiled with an exceptionally sinister and cruel expression. "Damn girl, you're really hard to kill." Before I could react, my father delivered a powerful kick to my head. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself in a room that felt both unfamiliar and familiar. The roof beam was broken in half, just like in my previous life, but the room now had many electrical appliances, even a television. For a few seconds, I couldn't quite process what was happening, until my parents, who looked several years younger, exclaimed excitedly, "Vivian, you're the Vivian who came back from Rebirth, aren't you?" I stared at the familiar yet unfamiliar faces before me. The emotions I had suppressed for so long finally erupted at this moment. I really want to confront my father. Why did he treat me so cruelly in my past life? I want to ask my mother, did she already know that father would throw me off the cliff? I had just started crying when my sobs were abruptly choked in my throat, because my new father was staring at me with excitement. She must be the reincarnated Vivian. The original Vivian was an idiot who couldn't even cry properly. My new mother chimed in eagerly. "I think so too. Wait here while I dig out that ancient book our ancestors left behind." Before long, the new mother came running back. "There are words now. The ancient book has words on it. It's about lottery tickets." The new father immediately jumped up in excitement. "So, in my past life, I had Vivian memorize lottery numbers. That must be it. If it were me, I'd definitely have Vivian memorize lottery tickets too." Watching the two of them chatting excitedly, my heart ached violently, like snowflakes swirling densely in the winter wind. The way they talked reminded me so much of that day in my past life when my parents discussed taking me to the graveyard. Perhaps my expression was too sorrowful, for my new mother noticed something was wrong with me. She slapped my new father and leaned down to wipe the tear stains from my cheeks. "Vivian, don't overthink it. Mom and Dad are just too happy." At this point, my new father also came to his senses. Yes, Vivian, Dad just didn't expect what our ancestors said to be true." I carefully sculpted the expressions on their faces through the mist, but I don't know if it's my imagination. I always feel their smiles are forced, yet I timidly shook my head. "It's okay." Perhaps it was my timid obedience that lowered the new parents' guard. The new father looked at me excitedly. "Vivian, Quickly tell us the lottery numbers now, today's the draw. And I can make it to the county before dark to watch the results. If Dad wins, I'll bring you back some delicious chocolate." Hearing his words, my heart tightened again. This father coaxing me now was just like the one from my past life. I finally told my new dad and mom the lottery numbers. That same day, they took my brothers to the county town. As for me, they tied a rope around my neck and tethered me to the bed at home. During their absence, I thought about many things. I think, as long as my new parents are willing to love me, I'm willing to be their daughter, because I don't want to be a child without parents. But I didn't expect that when they came back the next day, as soon as my new mother entered the door, she started scolding and was about to hit me. She was holding a willow branch. "Vivian, did you lie to us? The winning numbers from yesterday were completely wrong." I watched as my mother gradually overlapped with the one from my past life. I opened my mouth and burst into tears. "Mom, I don't know. The new mother wouldn't pay any attention to my cries. She raised a willow switch and began striking my body fiercely. I struggled to escape, but a thick rope was tied around my neck. No matter how hard I struggled, the new mother's stick always landed on me with unerring accuracy. I don't know how long the commotion lasted, but the new father, who had been sitting silently outside smoking, finally couldn't take it anymore and walked over. He snatched the stick from his new mother's hand. "Enough, stop hitting her. What if you kill her?" Hearing my new father's voice, the emotions I had been holding back instantly found solace. I threw myself into my new father's arms and burst into loud sobs. The new father patted me on the back. "Be good, Vivian, don't cry, don't blame your mom. She's just too anxious. You see how poor our family is. If we don't win the lottery, we won't even have enough to eat." I buried myself in the new father's embrace, listening to his pounding heartbeat, and after a long silence, I timidly said, "Dad, I really don't know what happened before. You just had me memorize it this way." The new father and new mother exchanged a glance. "Vivian, would you like to tell Dad how I made you memorize the lottery numbers before?" I agreed to the new father's request. That night, I told the new father everything about my past life. I even told them how many bowls of rice I ate every day. It wasn't until the moon hung on the treetops that my new father, seeing he couldn't get anything more out of me, finally let me sleep. But the moment they stepped out of my room, my tightly shut eyes opened again. I cried. She whimpered and cried softly, but I didn't cry for long. Next door, the angry voice of my new mother rang out. "Is it possible that this damn girl Vivian is lying?" My new father replied in a dry, hoarse voice. "Not very likely. In her previous life, she died at 6 years old. What kind of lie could a child that young even tell?" The new mother, "But why don't the lottery numbers match? Could it be that the previous life and this life are different?" The new father, "That's not impossible. How about we make some delicious food tomorrow morning to coax Vivian into writing down all the lottery numbers? That silly girl doesn't deserve to eat anything good. Once she writes down the lottery numbers tomorrow, you should just sell Vivian. We only kept her at home all these years because she was dumb, letting her freeload off us. To be honest, your family's ancestral book might just be fake. Whatever the case, let's first exchange Vivian for some money." I listened to the hushed conversations next door. The hot tears in my eyes grew even more intense. It turns out that whether it's my parents in this life or my parents in the past life, they all hated me just the same, because I cried all night. When I woke up the next morning, my eyes were swollen like big light bulbs. The new mother looked at me with a face full of anxiety. "What's wrong? Your eyes are so swollen." Seeing her worried expression, I remained silent for a long time before timidly saying, I'm fine." The new father quickly stepped forward and pulled me into his arms. "Vivian must have just been reborn and isn't used to it yet. Hurry up and get her a boiled egg to soothe her eyes." Listening to my new father's gentle voice, my heart ached with bitterness again. This father was so kind now, yet why was he just as bad as my father from my past life? One wanted to kill me, the other wanted to sell me. After finishing the fermented rice and egg dish made by my new mother, I applied a compress to my eyes. My new father tentatively looked at me. "Vivian, would you be willing to help Daddy by writing down those lottery numbers you memorized in your past life?" I silently stared at my new father for a long time before trembling and nodding slightly. "Okay," because my hands were too small to hold a pen properly. I dictated the lottery numbers while Dad wrote them down. Yet even so, it took me 3 days to memorize them, until all the lottery numbers were vividly laid out on paper. The new father gently rubbed my head. Vivian, as a reward. How about Daddy takes you to the county town tomorrow? In the end, I couldn't hold back my tears. Daddy, why don't you like me? If I've done something wrong, please tell me. I'll change. I don't want to be a child without parents. The new father's face changed dramatically in an instant, and he hurried over to pick me up. Nonsense. If I didn't like you, why would I take you to the county town to play? Even your brother hasn't been to the county town to play. I rested my head on my father's shoulder. Tears fell from my eyes like a curtain of rain, drop by drop. In the end, I still didn't say it. The brothers really didn't need to go to the county town, but you wouldn't have sold them either. Just like in my past life, I was taken to the county town by my new father, looking at the familiar streets, the familiar playground. I no longer felt the novelty and excitement of my past life. I only knew that taking one more step forward would send me tumbling into an abyss with no bottom in sight. I gripped my new father's hand tightly, pointing to the shop where my previous father had bought me ice cream. Dad, I want an ice cream. I don't need to go to the amusement park. Just like in my past life, my new father showed impatience, but he still patiently bought me a cheap ice cream. I skillfully tore open the ice cream wrapper. Yet somehow, the sweet flavor I remembered from my past life was gone. This time, all I tasted was bitterness, a bitterness stronger than dark chocolate. Dad first took me to a lottery shop to buy tickets. Only then did he lead me into a narrow alley. The new father arrived at a tightly shut door. He knocked on the door. Not long after, a foul-smelling, menacing-looking homeless man opened the door. I was so scared that I hid behind my dad, and it was precisely this action that allowed me to see the scene inside the house behind the homeless man. On the dilapidated floor were placed over 20 flower pots, but instead of flowers, they contained people. There were more than a dozen boys and girls with disabled legs crawling on the ground. Each of them held a bowl in their hands. Some were kowtowing, while others were crying. This suddenly reminded me of the disabled children I had encountered on the overpass. I was instantly terrified, feeling a cold sweat break out on my back. So, is this the flowerpot girl that the village talks about? Meanwhile, the new father and the vagabond were already chatting familiarly. This time it's my own daughter. No matter what, you've got to raise the price by 500. My girl is sharp. She'll definitely help you earn a lot of money. The vagabond looked at me as if appraising goods. All right, but you'll have to supply more goods for me soon. There's a big order from out of province. The new dad nodded. Okay. After saying that, the new dad suddenly pushed me toward the homeless man. My heart instantly tightened, suppressing the trembling in my chest. I forced a smile and said, Dad, do you want me to play at this uncle's house? But right now, I want you to take me to the lottery shop. I just remembered. I finally figured out why the lottery numbers were wrong. I think I got the time mixed up. As soon as I spoke, the new dad's expression changed instantly. He glanced at the homeless man, then fearfully handed back the $500 in his hand. Bro, I'll bring the person to you in a couple of days. I have something urgent to deal with right now. With that, my new father hurriedly carried me away from the place. But as he held me, my body grew increasingly stiff. If my new father hadn't sold me, he really could have lived a good life. I was carried by my new dad to the lottery shop, where this time he spent $100 to buy new lottery tickets. As I looked at my new dad, waves of pain surged through my chest. Once we left the lottery shop, my new dad reverted to his kind fatherly demeanor. Vivian, did you get the dates wrong for those lottery numbers you wrote for me? I lowered my head and pondered for a moment, pointing to a small restaurant not far away. I smiled and said, Dad, I won't tell you now. I want to go drink soy milk at that shop. My new father's expression clearly showed impatience, but he suppressed his anger and rubbed my head. Fine. When I arrived at the small restaurant, I ordered the same dishes as in my past life, but as I sipped the sweet soy milk, I couldn't hold back my tears any longer. My new father didn't notice me crying. His mood was so foul as he smoked his cigarette. I wiped the tears from my face with my palm. Holding her stomach and pretending to be in pain, she looked at him. Daddy, Vivian's tummy hurts. Can I go to the bathroom? The new father glanced at me impatiently. Hurry up and go. I gave Dad a bitter look, pushed back the chair, and headed toward the bathroom. But when it was time to turn, I didn't go to the bathroom, but ran to the kitchen instead. I dashed out through the back door of the small restaurant. I kept running and running. I ran straight to the place where I had encountered that murderer in my previous life and knocked on the door. the moment the other person opened the door. My body trembled. I'll give you 5 million, kill my father for me. The 5 million was what I saw on the lottery shop's wall. I don't know how much 5 million is, but I'm sure it's a lot. Otherwise, why would my father in my past life have been so cruel as to kill me? The man who opened the door for me, however, crossed his arms and looked at me with a laugh. Where did this kid come from, so bold as to openly ask to hire a killer? I stared in horror, my eyes wide with fear. The man before me resembles yet differs from the man in my past life. He still wears the brown leather jacket, but his face lacks that outward-turned scar, and his demeanor is entirely different. Gone is the solemnity, replaced instead by a touch of gentleness. I suddenly felt conflicted. Could it be that in this life, he hasn't yet become a murderer? I slumped like a deflated ball, burying my head. Ever since coming back to life, I've been thinking and thinking. What if my parents try to kill me again? I considered every possible solution before settling on this murderer, but now, I immediately started crying pitifully. Am I really destined to be sold by my father in this life, made into a flowerpot girl, and forced to beg on the streets? But I want to study, I want to go to school just like my eldest brother. Seeing me cry, the man seemed flustered. He hurriedly crouched down. Hey, kid, why are you crying all of a sudden? I was just about to say. Excuse me, not far away. The angry shouts of my new father could be heard. I trembled all over in fear. Ducking under the man's arm, I dashed toward the house. I screamed in panic, closed the door quickly. My dad is coming. The man, however, looked at me unhurriedly. Kid, running away from home isn't good. I was so frantic that I started crying even louder. I sobbed. But if I don't run away from home, Dad will sell me to be a flowerpot girl, for some reason. The man's expression changed dramatically upon hearing my words. He suddenly slammed the door shut with great force. He locked the door and walked towards me. Not only did he approach me, but several other men also stepped forward behind him. It was then that I realized there were several other men in the room besides the murderer. Kid, you'd better tell us quickly what this flowerpot girl is all about. I looked at them in horror. I never thought that just as I had escaped the cage of my new father, I would immediately fall into another bloody pit. I cried, hysterically. The men immediately became flustered and started scrambling around. A somewhat chubby man pulled out a piece of chocolate. Little girl, don't cry, Uncle will give you some chocolate. I squinted my eyes slightly and took a glance. Who wants some chocolate? My tongue is about to go numb from the bitterness. I took a deep breath and kept crying. A tall man made funny faces to cheer me up, but looking at his appearance, I could only recall the terrifying image of my father from my previous life, who had thrown me off a cliff with a ferocious expression. I was so frightened that I cried even harder, until the murderer who had just opened the door for me said with a booming voice, "If you keep crying, your father might hear you." My sobs instantly caught in my throat, pursing his lips. He dared not make another sound. The group of grown men immediately let out a long sigh of relief. The tallest man stood up and patted the murderer on the shoulder. "Kevin, I didn't expect you to have a way with criminals. You're also quite experienced with kids." The murderer disdainfully brushed off his hand and crouched down toward me. "Little one, we're police officers. Just tell us about the flowerpot girl, and we can make sure your dad doesn't sell you." I looked at him fearfully, remaining silent for several seconds before stubbornly retorting, How do I know you're really police? And, people in the village say, even the police can't do anything about the flowerpot girl." The murderer scoffed coldly. "That's not necessarily true. We're here specifically to catch those people." The man took out a police officer's ID. "Look, this is my police badge." I stared intently at the man in military uniform on the blue booklet. "Can you really stop me from being sold?" The man nodded solemnly. Looking at the man's expression, I felt a surge of joy in my heart, but before I could even rejoice, my chest suddenly tightened. This was immediately followed by a wave of dizziness. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself in an exquisitely decorated, luxurious room. Sitting by my bed was a beautiful woman with short hair, dressed in a white blouse. Seeing me awake, she smiled and gently touched my forehead. "Sweetie, you're awake." I stared at her for several seconds. "Sister, are you a police officer too?" The elder sister nodded with a smile. "Yes, my name is Judy Zhou. So little one, you can tell me anything." I carefully studied the expression on the woman's face, but after staring for a long time, I couldn't discern anything. In my past life, when my father lied to me, his expression would become stiff, when my mother lied, the smile at the corner of her lips would only curl up halfway. The smile on the woman's face was quite beautiful. I hesitated for a long while, but in the end, I decided to trust her. I can give you 5 million, oh no, 6 million, or even 7 million. Can you take me away from here? My sister smiled and gently ruffled my hair. That won't do. If you want me to take you away from here, you'll have to tell me about the flower pot girl first. I tilted my head in confusion. Do you mean I have to tell you about both lifetimes? The woman was momentarily taken aback. But she quickly composed herself and smiled at me. That's right. I remained silent for a long while before finally telling her everything about my past life and this one. I don't know why, but as I spoke, my sister kept crying. By the time I finished, her eyes were so swollen they looked like big light bulbs. I looked at her with a pang of heartache. Sis, do you have any boiled eggs here? If you use a warm boiled egg to soothe your eyes, the swelling won't turn red. Back when Mom used to hit me, I'd often cry until my eyes were red and swollen. In the mornings, when I ate eggs, I'd use the boiled ones to press against my eyelids for a while. It would stop the pain, but somehow, my sister only cried even harder. I couldn't help but look at her helplessly. This sister of mine is really such a crybaby. After a long silence, I imitated how Dad used to hold me and reached out to hug her. All right, sister, let me hug you. Let me hug you, and you won't cry anymore. The sound of his sister's crying brought Kevin inside. He slightly furrowed his brows. Why are you still crying? I looked at him with some disdain. Girls need to be comforted when they cry. This was a line I just learned from the TV playing in the small restaurant. Kevin, however, grinned widely. Well, aren't you quite the little expert? He teased. Kevin walked over and wrapped his arms around both me and my sister. There, hubby's got you. A hug will make it all better. I was just about to praise Kevin. With one shove, my sister sent Kevin sprawling on his back. Get lost. Who said you're anyone's husband? Sobbing, my sister ran out of the room. Kevin pouted and got up from the ground. See, troublemaker, I got hit by your sister. All right, you stay here for now. I'll call that tall brother to keep you company while I go calm your sister down. I watched Kevin's retreating figure. A slight smile curled at the corners of my lips. I don't know what's going on. There's an indescribable sweet feeling in my chest. After that, I stayed in this house all the time, and different uncles would come to play with me every day, but the one who accompanied me the most was that tall brother. These have been the happiest days of my 2 lifetimes. The only thing that saddens me is that I told each of my brothers the lottery numbers, and not a single one of them actually went to buy a ticket, even though every time it makes me tremble with anger. They still just laugh and tease me. I don't understand why the wealth that both generations of fathers most desired would be treated with such disdain in their eyes, until one day, Uncle Fatty suddenly screamed in shock. Holy shit, holy shit, holy shit. Everyone gathered around him. What's wrong? Uncle Fatty swallowed hard. The lottery numbers Vivian told me yesterday turned out to be today's jackpot. Tall brother said in horror. Quick, check the past winning numbers. Holy shit. These are the lottery numbers Vivian gave me last time. And this one, isn't this the lottery number she gave me as a reward when she lost at rock paper scissors last time? Everyone looked at me in disbelief. I just glanced at them indifferently and continued jumping my rubber band. I told you, but you didn't believe me, just as everyone gathered around wanting to continue questioning me. Kevin walked over with a face full of rage. Vivian, go back to your room now, you few. Come with me to the next room. I was startled by the expression on Kevin's face and was about to pout and cry. Sister Judy walked over and took my hand. Don't be afraid, Vivian, come back to the room with me. When we returned to the room, Sister Judy looked at me gently. Vivian, promise me one thing. Never recite lottery numbers for anyone again. I looked at her with some confusion. Why not? I like those uncles and brothers. I want them to become very rich. My sister reached out and gently tucked the stray hairs on my forehead behind my ears. Vivian, everyone loves money. But only the money we earn with our own hands has value and meaning. Do you think cheating is good? I shook my head. Then what's the difference between telling your brothers the lottery numbers and letting them cheat? Promise me, from now on, no matter who asks you for the lottery numbers, don't tell them, including me, including Kevin, including your mom and dad. Just like how you bravely kept the lottery numbers from your parents before, you must keep them from everyone now. Listening to Judy's gentle voice. Though I didn't fully understand what she meant, I still nodded solemnly. Okay. Apart from me no longer talking about the lottery, the other brothers in the house also never mentioned the lottery again. It was as if the lottery had completely vanished from my life, until one day, the voice of our new father was heard in the place where we lived. He banged on the door with a loud thud, thud. "Come out, hand over my daughter. If you don't, I'll call the police." I trembled all over with fear. The tall older brother who stayed home to play with me calmly said, "Vivian, don't be afraid, I'll protect you. Now listen to me and go to your room." I didn't dare to cause any more trouble for my brother, so I shivered and retreated to my room. I only opened the door a tiny crack. I saw my brother go to open the door for Dad, but as soon as the door opened slightly, my brother was knocked to the ground by a tremendous force. 7 or 8 burly men walked in. Leading them were my dad and the boss of the flower pot doll. The flower pot boss glanced around the room. "Where's that damn girl? Hand her over." The older brother furrowed his brows and got up from the ground. "Who are you? And what are you doing in my house?" The flower shop owner let out a cold laugh. "You're just an outsider, yet you dare to arrest people here, asking for trouble." The flower shop owner's words had barely faded when the thugs behind him closed in. They pinned my brother's hands and began beating him. I watched as they kicked my brother in the stomach. I watched as they punched my brother in the head. Brother's mouth was bleeding profusely. I desperately covered my mouth, tears dripping down and soaking my palms. As I watched them about to slam brother's head against the wall, my body trembling, I rushed out. "Stop it, you can't hit my brother." My brother trembled all over upon hearing my voice. He looked at me with a sob. "Vivian, run, don't come over." The flower shop owner sneered and kicked my brother's head several more times violently. I watched as more and more blood streamed down my brother's face. Trembling, I picked up the fruit knife on the table and pressed it against the side of my neck. You, all of you, stop fighting, or else, I'll die right now. You'll never get the lottery numbers. The lottery numbers I told you before, were fake. I know the real, winning numbers." As soon as my words left my mouth, my father's expression changed instantly. He glared at me with fury. "Vivian, you little bitch. You even lied to me." I stared fixedly at my new father. You're not my father at all." But just as my words faded, a sharp pain shot through the wrist of the hand holding the knife. My stomach was the next to suffer. Not only did the thug who suddenly appeared behind me snatch my knife, but he also kicked me far away like a rag doll. Meanwhile, my brother, who had been knocked to the ground earlier, saw me being attacked and climbed up with a furious expression. He rushed over and tried to grab hold of the thug who was about to seize me. Just as he was about to reach the thug, the fruit knife in the thug's hand instantly plunged into my brother's body. I watched this scene in horror. I cried, hysterical. I crawled towards my brother's direction. I clung desperately to the thug's thigh. I frantically gnawed at the thug's skin. But all I could see was the scene of my brother being stabbed repeatedly by the thug. My brother's blood stained my hair, stained my cheeks, until my brother's body, like a stiff puppet, was shoved aside by the thug. Only then did I rise in terror, scrambling to snatch the knife from the thug's hand. I want to be reborn. If I am reborn, my brother can live. But before I could even touch the thug, he grabbed me and lifted me up. He grabbed my legs and, with practiced ease, twisted them apart. A loud, crack sound. Intense pain instantly overwhelmed my internal organs. My legs went limp and dangled weakly. The thug lifted me up as if handling a chick. The boss of the potted doll shop smiled as he looked at the thug. "Xiaohe's flower planting technique is getting better and better. That's fine. Once she reveals all the lottery numbers, we'll sell her as a potted doll to another city." The new father fawned over the boss of the potted doll shop. "No problem. Just tell me what to do, and I'll do it." I was carried out the door by the thug. Just as I reached the door, I ran into Kevin and the older brothers. I screamed in terror, "Get out of here. Don't come any closer. Go now. Hurry. I am broken like an old ox that keeps moaning." But Kevin and my brother didn't listen to me. He walked towards me. Through tear-blurred eyes, I watched everything before me. I watched Kevin kick the potted plant doll boss. I saw the other brothers restraining my father, and in the blink of an eye, the thug holding me pressed a knife against my neck. "Let us go, or I'll kill her." Kevin pulled out a gun from his trouser pocket. "Impossible." The thug glared fiercely at Kevin. "Seems like you want this hostage dead." The thug was just about to slash my neck with a knife. My body suddenly sank. I was slammed to the ground by the thug. Just as I let out a terrified scream, Kevin caught me firmly. Only then did I realize the thug had been subdued by Sister Judy. Terrified, I wrapped my arms around Kevin's neck. Kevin, let me die. If I die, I can save the tall brother. Let him kill me. Kevin pressed my head tightly against his chest. Be good, this is grown-up business. As soon as Kevin finished speaking, the fallen thug suddenly got up from the ground. He pulled out a knife from his pant leg and lunged at Kevin's back. My pupils constricted sharply. Be careful. The next second, Kevin twisted to the side. The knife slid viciously past Kevin's face. A large amount of blood instantly dripped down. I watched this scene in horror. I cried and wailed, reaching out to cover the wound on Kevin's face, but the blood seemed to have legs, continuously seeping through my fingers. No, don't die. When I woke up again, I was in a white hospital room. My leg was in a cast. My forehead was wrapped in bandages. I looked at Sister Judy sitting by the bed. Tears instantly fell. Sister, let me die. Okay, that way I can save tall brother and Kevin. Sister Judy smiled and ruffled my hair. Silly, I asked your dad. Your rebirth ability can only be used once, and you've already used it, so you can't use it again. I broke down into hysterical sobs. Then, if I die, I won't be able to save Kevin and tall brother either. At that moment, the ward door was flung wide open from the inside. Kevin walked in with gauze wrapped around his face. TSK, what a waste of all those candies I bought you, you little ingrate, always wishing me dead. I looked at Kevin, crying and laughing at the same time, but Kevin stared at me with a stern expression. Little Vivian, you need to calm down right this instant. If you keep causing trouble for the doctors, I'll spank your bottom. I was so startled by him that my back shivered, and he successfully earned a glare from Sister Judy. But after Kevin left, I inexplicably felt sad again. Every time I closed my eyes, the scene of the tall brother's death would appear. I often wake up startled just as I'm falling asleep. I often burst into tears for no apparent reason. Later, a beautiful aunt came to the hospital room. She asked me to draw. She tells me stories. She also plays with me. But somehow, gradually, I didn't feel so sad anymore. I stayed in the hospital for a long time before the doctor finally said I could be discharged. The moment I learned I was to be discharged, I felt an unprecedented sense of panic. I didn't know where I would be sent. Sister Judy seemed to notice my confusion. She smiled and linked arms with Kevin. Little Vivian, let's get to know each other again. From today onward, I'll be your mom, and he'll be your dad. I widened my eyes in disbelief. Will you become my new dad and mom? Kevin looked at me with some disdain. Right, if it weren't for you. Your mom wouldn't have agreed to marry me. My status in this family is really low. I was giggling at Kevin. No, I mean, Dad. I went to my new dad and mom's house. The place was beautifully decorated, all in my favorite pink color. I even got my own room. Dad told me I could do whatever I wanted, but I wasn't allowed to mess with his wife. Then, without exception, he was kicked over by his mom again, landing on his back. Every time, I would be tickled into giggles by my dad and mom, until one day. Mom suddenly brought me a backpack. He said I could go to kindergarten. I was extremely happy at that time. My greatest wish in both lifetimes was to study. I finally fulfilled my wish, but after the joy, I inexplicably felt down. I said somewhat gloomily, Mom, can I go see the tall uncle? Mom's body trembled violently. Vivian, wait until you're a little older. Okay, although I felt extremely upset. I knew Mom was doing it for my own good, actually. I'd known for a long time that the aunt who came to play with me in the hospital room was a psychologist. I saw the diary locked in my mother's drawer that documented my life. So these days, even though my heart often feels bitter and astringent, I still force back the urge to cry and keep smiling, because Mom and Dad want to see me smile. I learned about my biological father's situation on a weekend afternoon, that day. I took the $5 my mother gave me to buy soy sauce at the small grocery store downstairs. The elderly neighbor who ran the grocery store had the news playing on TV. The city has cracked its largest human trafficking case to date, involving a total of 20 suspects. Harry James, Fiona. I stared fixedly at my biological parents standing in the dock. Under the voice of the news anchor, I learned their final verdict. Both Mom and Dad were sentenced to death. Beneath the indifferent tone of the news anchor, the old man's angry curses could be heard. These human traffickers deserve to have their bloodline cut off. The old man's furious scolding made me flush with shame. I rushed back home without even buying the soy sauce. Mom saw me and slightly furrowed her brows. Vivian, what's wrong? Tell me what happened. I forced a smile. I'm fine. Who would have thought that my usually gentle mother would suddenly lose her temper? Vivian, cry right now. Immediately, cry right now. I shook my head with a smile. I'm fine. But Mom started to cry. She grabbed me and spanked my bottom several times hard. Cry for me now. You must cry for me. I don't know if it was because Mom was being fierce or because my bottom hurt so much. With a loud wah, I burst into tears. I twisted my lips. Mom, I'm a child trafficker's kid. I should die without descendants. I should have. Mom pulled me tightly into her embrace. You're not. You're the child of Judy and David Copper. Your name is Vivian Copper, not Vivian James. Your father and mother are police officers. You're not the child of human traffickers. From today onward, you must firmly remember these words in your mind. Listening to my mother's words, I cried even harder. Yes, I'm not the child of a human trafficker. I'm the child of a police officer. It was just before my 6th birthday when my parents agreed to let me visit the tall older brother. That day, my mother asked me what I wanted for my 6th birthday. I mustered up the courage to ask, Mom, can I go see the tall brother? Mom didn't agree to me right away, but that same day, a fierce argument erupted in Dad and Mom's room. How could you agree? Why would you agree? Vivian is still so young to go through these things. I'll never agree to anything that could hurt Vivian. Judy, I know you're worried about Vivian, but Vivian isn't an ordinary child. She's very sensible, and she'll be fine. Just because our Vivian is sensible, does that mean she has to endure pain that even adults can't bear? I'd rather she be like an ordinary child, not so sensible, but that's Vivian's wish, isn't it? I lay in bed, listening to Mom and Dad argue because of me. My heart felt sour and bitter, but I still wanted to go see the tall uncle. But I didn't expect that when I woke up the next morning, there were already many gifts placed in the living room. Dad came back from outside, sweating profusely. With a beaming smile, she complained to her mom, Look at you, why did you prepare so much stuff? Anyone who doesn't know better would think our house is a supermarket. My mom was tidying up the fruits in the living room. You don't understand a thing. This is Vivian's first time going to George's house to thank him for saving her life. The gifts have to be generous. My eyes widened in delight. Mom, you're really letting me go to Uncle George's house. Mom came over and gently touched my head. That's right. Whatever Vivian wants to do, Mom will always support you. That same day, I went to Uncle George's house. As I looked at the black and white photo displayed in the living room, I cried, hysterically. I recalled the moment when my brother George saved me. I recalled the moment when he was stabbed repeatedly in the body. I knelt down and kowtowed heavily 3 times to Uncle George. Thank you, tall brother, for saving me. I then kowtowed 3 times to Uncle George's parents, Grandpa and Grandma. From now on I'll be your real granddaughter. When I grow up, I'll earn money to support you, and Mom and Dad. Thank you for giving me such a happy life now. On my 6th birthday, Mom wanted to throw me a grand birthday party. I declined. I told Mom I wanted to go to the lottery store. Mom paused slightly but then smiled, ruffling my hair as she agreed. I went to the lottery shop and bought the last set of numbers I remembered from my previous life. On the day I claimed the prize, I donated all the money to the Red Cross. I hoped the funds would be specifically allocated to rescuing trafficked children. On my 6th birthday, I made a birthday wish. I wish my brother George could turn into a baby and become Mom's child. I promised to take care of him just as he has taken care of me. After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.